like salad. Do you like salad?
Welcome to Canadian Salad,
a fun, factual, and friendly podcast about culture and integration in Canada.
I'm one of your hosts. I'm Hostion Ho from China, currently living in unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
And I'm Andrea McCauley, an immigrant from the United States, broadcasting you from the unceded traditional territory of the Lekwungen people, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations.
And you're listening to Canadian Salad.
It's another Tuesday, another Canadian salad.
I know. Let's have some salad every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday. How often do you eat salad, Hoshin?
Actually, not a lot.
I know, me neither. Summertime, yes, but definitely not like when it gets colder.
Well, unless it's Tuesday, Tuesday every Tuesday is Canadian salad. That's when I eat
True,
salad.
that's right. Every Tuesday, it might not be a physical salad, but it is definitely a salad. And here we are.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
And today, this salad is gonna be about something we kind of talked about before, but just another.
We've talked about a lot.
Angle. We talk about true. We're gonna talk about Hofstede. As Hofstede cultural dimension again.
Ah, yes, the German philosopher. That was terrible French accent, and I don't think he's German. He's Dutch, right?
I think he's Dutch. Yes. Anyway, Hofstede
on a roll.
Yeah, this famous sociologist. We have explained in previous episodes that he developed a model of 6 dimensions to measure culture.
Yeah.
And in our previous episode, we talked about 2 dimensions, which are, oh my God, the 2 dimensions that we talked
Power
about.
distance.
Power distance, yes.
Yes.
And what's the other one?
You know what, folks? Just go and listen to episode 2 of this season 3, episode 2. And patriarchy. Masculine, feminine.
Masculinity and femininity. Yes.
This is what happens when you get old and you don't eat enough salad, Hoshin.
Exactly. But anyway, yes. And today we're going to explore the other 2 dimensions, which is uncertainty avoidance and individualism versus collectivism.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the 2 dimensions we're going to explore today.
Yeah.
We're going to explore what this dimension means, what are their real life examples, and learn how they interact with each other and why they matter in global terms.
For sure. This is what I love about even Hofstede and some kind of framework is that I don't know that people recognize patterns or behaviors and we only notice them maybe in comparison to other people. But what I love about having some kind of language around it is like, oh, this is how I operate. This is how I see my world or other people. And I think it helps us know how to navigate teams or relationships or our global experiences.
Landscape.
Yeah, exactly.
I think having framework to explain culture is always interesting because all the time, I think when we discuss culture with other people who, let's say, share different culture experience with us, sometimes it's just like very general, right? No, I mean general, but they also very example based. It's like, oh, we do this and you do that. It has to be based on specific incidents. But then having framework to explain or even to score, because Hofstede's culture dimensions actually have scores. So, even talk about, you're from individualistic culture, I'm from individualistic culture, but who is more individualistic? So what are the examples? How is it measured? And Hofstede's model gives that kind of framework. It just makes it so much easier to explain.
It does. Yeah. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah. So talk about individualistic. I know the obvious difference between you and me, like you're from a very individualistic culture. I'm from a very collective culture. Do you think, like after learning so much about culture, do you think you become more collective?
This is a tricky question because I am extroverted. And so I feel like sometimes I crave more collective lifestyle. Like I wish I could just walk down the street to my friend's house and just walk in the door. I also, in the work that I do, I'm thinking about what needs to be done for the collective good of people rather than just my own individual rights. And so I think being more, I don't know, it's hard to say. I feel like my extrovertedness has always made me more, I want to be a part of the group and I want the group to be a part of me. But I think if I apply that to maybe even just my engagement with politics, social activism, and even the things I'm teaching my son, I think I'm very much more collective minded than I am individualistic minded. How about you?
Oh, I think I'm definitely, well, from a collective culture, I think I'm more individualistic slowly, especially living in an individualistic country like Canada.
Yeah.
I was talking to friends the other day that when I was younger living in China, like we go out with friends, we're almost in some sort of group every day. It's unlikely you are just by yourself and doing your own thing. You're always with a lot of people, families and siblings and relatives, and you're always like forced to think in terms of what is good for the collective good.
Yeah.
Because you're always with people. You don't just make your own decision, you make decision for everyone. But moving here, of course, that changed dramatically. A lot of time, like you even go out with friends, you have to schedule. Everyone has their life. You schedule to meet them, which is like usually days advance, not like the next day. Usually days advance. And a lot of time when you make decision, you only need to think about what you want. People usually also kind of expect what you want to do other than. And sometimes when people do things, it was like, it's a very good example of food. When you go out, a lot of time is we each order what we want and we eat our food.
Sure.
But then in China, we do family style. You order food for everyone.
And then you just share the feast.
Exactly. Yeah. So like even in terms of food, when you share food is a difference there. Yeah. But now, of course, I definitely when I go out eat food with friends, I also, the default is I order food for myself.
Yeah. We didn't share pho when we had pho together.
But I would not mind.
We did share appetizers. So, we had a bit of both, like collectivism and individualism in our meals. So, yeah.
Anyway, it's a good year to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because now we're going to dive into it.
Okay.
Like, I think
splashy.
a lot of us know individualism and collectivism that as one dimension. I think a lot of us, our listeners have an idea of it. But uncertainty avoidance, which I think a lot of people will not have an idea exactly.
It's a weird combination of words, uncertainty, avoidance.
Yeah, avoid uncertainty and avoid blurry situations.
Yes.
But anyway, so uncertainty avoidance measures how comfortable a culture is with ambiguity, uncertainty, and unstructured situations. In high uncertainty avoidant cultures, people feel more threatened by unknowns and prefer rules, formal procedures, planning, and structure.
Yeah.
In low uncertainty avoidant cultures, ambiguity is more tolerated. Rules are more flexible and people accept change more readily. Yes. For some of the key characters of like high uncertainty avoidance culture, they prefer clear rules, laws, policies, higher stress or anxiety when situations are ambiguous, and definitely less tolerance for deviance or novelty, and very rigid institutions, strong formality, and risk-taking is not necessarily low, but ambiguity is uncomfortable.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And to individualism versus collectivism, the dimension captures how people see themselves in relationship to the group. Individualistic culture, the self is a primary. People tend to look after themselves and their direct family. In collective cultures, individuals are embedded in the group, whether it's an extended family or in groups like your friend group or classmates or even colleagues. And they value loyalty, harmony, group goals, some key characteristics, including like for culture that are very individualistic, like decision-making is all about autonomy.
Sure.
And communication is very direct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And collective culture, communication is very like context sensitive, like it depends on context.
Yeah.
Yes. And conflict, for example, for individualistic culture are very confrontational. Yeah. And collective culture is avoidant. And for identity, of course, individualistic culture are very about me, about how I see myself, what I want. And collective culture is about how the group is seeing themselves, how the group, as a group thinking. Yes. So that's kind of the basic meaning and idea what this two dimension is. There is a lot of examples of how this kind of really manifests in real life. For example, in conflict styles. A good example is, for example, Japan. Japan is often considered very collective, but also very high in uncertainty avoidance, right?
Really?
So we just talk about like very like collective culture usually avoids conflict, but then the high uncertainty
So they
avoidance
really
also
don't
makes they
they like
don't
that structure.
they don't like conflict, but then they like rules and harmony.
Which
They
makes
like
sense.
rules.
Yeah.
They like
Yeah.
rules, they like structure, they like everything is set in stone. And
Yeah.
if you let's say you cross the line, you disobey the rule, they're not gonna confront you very likely. They just maybe be passive aggressive about it.
Yeah.
They don't like to be
Yeah.
confrontational.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Quick question. Do you avoid vague or ambiguous situations?
I think I'm definitely more tolerant about it. I realized that. Like, for example, this thing happened to me actually a couple of weeks ago. A friend asked me, a friend told me something like, oh, we should hang out Thursday. I was okay. And in the morning's good. I was okay, good. For me, it's great. Ambiguous.
Yeah.
And then I think on Wednesday, he gave me like a time. I was, let's
Okay.
say, I wanted to play 11 a.m. And then I already went to sleep.
So
I
you
was
didn't
going to
see it.
sleep at that time when I didn't see it. So I woke up and then and it's already 11 when I woke up and it's oh my God, it's 11 already late. And then so he was pissed because he was like, oh, I'll give you a time because I thought that we needed to set it a time. We never set a time. I was like, for me, it just I'm okay with not setting a time and just be ready at whatever time. And of course, he's more Canadian, so he definitely had high uncertainty avoidance. And I am definitely more okay with
Just
uncertainty.
nuance, and just like go with the flow kind of a thing.
I'm going to Asia soon. My plan, like I know some friends when they plan their travel, some friends actually did ask me, "Oh, did you plan like every day where you want to go?" Like I was like, I mean, kind of every day I have like one thing or two thing I want to do, but I never like set in stone I have to do it.
Yeah.
So I did plan something, but did not plan absolutely everything. So it's like a mix. I feel like I'm a mix of both, like low and high uncertainty avoidance. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes. And then this two dimension also affects, for example, leadership style.
Yes.
For example, China is a very collective culture, and unlike Japan, it's very low in uncertainty avoidance. That means they are okay with ambiguity. In these kind of group-centric societies, leaders are often open to lead with flexibility and ambiguity. For example, like if there's certain rules and procedures that are set in the company, employees will always think that it's okay to bend. Like if I know there's things I'm not supposed to do, but then if a situation happen, we just expect the leader to be okay to bend those rules because of certain situation arise. And then I think one other good example is also like for some traffic signs, like people always see it as a suggestion rather than actual things to obey.
No, that's not the limit. That's just the guide. That's
that's
just
the
a
guide.
suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also led to a situation, for example, I know it's not necessarily a great kind of cultural phenomenon in China, but it's a very common. Let's say there's certain thing I need to need to get done, but the government procedure might take too long. Then a lot of people will like visit, maybe bring some gifts. Then they visit the leader of that department and they give them some gifts,
shortens.
like quote unquote, bribery.
Interesting.
And then they will maybe just approve it faster. And it's like commonly accepted. It's a common thing that people do.
Which is very collective, which is very like, but for an individualistic purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also
I feel like,
But it's like also that flexibility and that ambiguity that the whole culture just accepts. Oh, you are a leader. I need something. So I need to kind of visit you. I'm going to give you some gifts and then you have to bend the rules for me.
Yeah,
and it's like commonly accepted.
Interesting. Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah. So there's leadership style there.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to discuss is also about innovation and change, how it in these two dimensions is very different. For example, in a low uncertainty avoidance culture, For example, in China, they are maybe the easier to accept kind of disruptive innovations.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that innovation has to fit in collective goals.
And yes, okay, interesting. Yeah. Which
But
is not
yeah,
Canada.
which is not necessarily the easiest. So innovations are
No.
always good and people are more accepted of things changing, things
Mm,
new in technology hey, happened here and there. But
mm,
you have to definitely not like it has to be work in a very collective measure.
mm.
There was a small collective element in it. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
to be good, a greater good for the group to use, not for personal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to be justified by the group.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm just thinking about Canada. I'm just thinking about resistance to change, whether that might be using pronouns, whether that might be not using certain words anymore, or having women in leadership, or, there's just a lot of things that I think there's a lot of tradition in Canada. Like this is
Yeah,
the
but that's
way we've
like,
been done doing stuff.
yeah,
But
Canada is high in uncertainty avoidance, right?
right,
And that all Canada is a great example. Actually, high uncertainty avoidant countries are actually usually resist
change.
change because again, they love rigid rules and
Right,
structure that's in place.
right.
So to change it is always slightly more difficult,
Yes.
unless it's like, of course, it's justified, right?
Yeah, like even if we look at Trump's threats to Canada to like say, hey, you're the 51st state, I'm going to stop all these tariffs. Like Canada infrastructurally is trying to like look inward more, and
Mm-hmm.
that is hard because so many relationships, so many partnerships, so many. I mean, we have agreements for NAFTA, like we have these like transnational kind of projects that we have been
Mm-hmm.
doing for years, and so to all of a sudden be like, oh, how do we turn this internally, or how do we find external partners that are not the U.S.? I mean, that's not something you can do overnight, and some people, I don't know, are resistant to it because this is just the way we've done things and it's worked.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it doesn't work
but
anymore.
I know, and then it has to change. But
Yeah.
then, at the same breath, although you can see what we talk about is how high uncertain avoidance, uncertain avoidance would limit us for change. But if you look in the States, you also look into how individualistic also helps with change. Like Trump wanted to change
Mm,
certain thing, it changed based on what he wants, not
right.
necessarily what the country or the collective needs or wants,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
in very high individualistic cultures, if someone, a leader, for example, a high leader, want to make certain thing change, it can also just work it that way because they have the authority and they
Sure.
want it that way.
Mm,
Whether
hmm.
if that same thing can happen in countries like China or Japan, even the
Right.
leader wants certain things, you usually need to go through like the party, have the collective has to be okay with it.
Mm,
Unless
hmm.
you're, of course, you're in a dictatorship kind of situation that may
Right.
be slightly easier.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but what Trump does is definitely less likely be done in a lot of collective cultures.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Philippines now is like they are throwing their government off because how the government have been operating in such corruption.
Yeah. Well, even
Yeah,
South Korea, they've
many
cycled through
president.
many, it just in the past 5 years. I don't even
Yeah,
know how many it's been, but they've cycled through quite a few.
I
Yeah.
know. But the thing is, no offense to the states, but a lot of things that the Korean
You can
government
offend them.
or
It's okay.
okay, and I'm just saying all the corruption, like Korea, one of the president got thrown off because he hired a lot of his family in the government and people don't like that.
Mm,
And then Trump is literally hiring every one of his family in the
so
office.
gross. Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
is also says like how individualistic culture that is okay. People somehow is well individualistic. He's a
That's what you
president. He
do.
want
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
But in collective culture, no, you are the president, but we didn't like your family. We
Yeah.
did not agree on that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
For
Yeah.
example, yeah, that's yeah. And the last I want to talk about is work and stress, which I found a very interesting research
Mm,
I'm really excited to share. It really specifically talks about these two dimensions about individualism and about uncertainty avoidance, how it affects how work affects us.
mm, hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
this research paper that I found in a Journal of Organizational Behavior titled Societal Individualism, Collectivism, and Uncertainty Avoidance as Cultural Moderators of Relationships Between Job Resources and Strain.
Interesting.
This study
Mm,
looked at how different job resource means like whether you have control over your work, whether you have support from your boss, job
Okay.
resource in the sense of the freedom you have your job and the help that you get
I
for your
see. The
job.
supports
Yeah.
to enable you to
The
do the
support,
job
yeah.
that you can do.
Exactly. That's
Okay,
called
gotcha.
in this research they just
Particular.
they use job resources as
Okay.
one word to include all of them.
Mm.
So they look at how different job resources reduce stress and burnout at work. And whether this changes depends on the country's culture, which specifically is the country's individualistic score and the uncertainty avoidance score. And here is the founding, which is interesting. For overall, so in all countries, generally more job resources means more job freedom, more job support. It gets happier workers and less people wants to quit. And that's true no matter where you are, what culture you're from. But there is slightly different. There's some degree of difference how it actually help based on whether you're individualistic or whether you're uncertain avoidant country. For someone in very individualistic countries like the US, like the UK, like Canada, like Australia, job freedom is even more efficient at reducing thoughts of quitting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So compared to collective countries, individualistic countries, if people feel like they have more freedom and how they do their job, it actually helps them even more to reduce stress and reduce thoughts of quitting.
Yeah.
Yes. And being involved in decision making, actually, compared to collective culture, is less helpful than expected.
Really?
Yeah. So like in individualistic country, I would assume actually reading, I would assume like being involved in decision making, I would assume helping people to feel this kind of autonomy at work, maybe help them even want to stay in work and happier at work. But actually in the individualistic cultures, not so much compared to collective culture. People actually feel like happier if they are involved in decision making, if they are from a collective culture compared to individualistic culture.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you're a company, you want your employee to be happier, you should actually focus on giving them more freedom over how they do their job rather than trying your best to involve in every decision making. Yeah, that will actually help them better.
Which the pandemic allowed some of that. It was organizations realized, oh, actually, if you're motivated, you just get the work done. That's all we really care about. How you do it is fine. But that is interesting because I've worked with some organizations. In one particular organization, I did like a internal communications survey, and a lot of people said they didn't know what the organization was doing when. They didn't know where their job was going, if they had any opportunities to advance. Like there was just so much uncertainty and so much stress because they wanted to know. They wanted to know exactly how did their role fit into the overall goal of the organization, and do we have enough money to keep going and down the future? Like it was a nonprofit. So I can see where not having that information, at least here, at least with some, it can increase that stress a whole lot more, for sure.
Yeah, but I think that's all part of the job control about having the resources help, because the general founding is having more job resources, having more support, having more freedom helps people to feel happier at work. But in terms of decision making for specifically individualistic culture, it doesn't really help them that much to feel happy and grounded in their work. And I think knowing whether the organization has enough, whether have enough money, not necessarily is about getting involved in decision making. If you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other dimension about high uncertainty avoidance countries like Japan, Greece, Portugal, job controls, again, means whether they have freedom over their job, and being involved in decision making help even more in reducing turnover intentions. So in high uncertainty avoidance country who like rules, they love having freedom in their job and love being involved in decision making.
Which makes
clear
sense
goals
because
and
you're closer to that information. You have more autonomy. So
exactly.
You can know
So
what's going on. Yeah.
Exactly. So I also, because it's high uncertainty avoidance, clear goals and feedbacks also work better. and improving job satisfaction.
For sure.
It's just
Yeah.
like everything that's clear. Yeah. So to sum up, freedom and autonomy, like job control, works best in culture that values individualism or structure, like high uncertainty avoidant
Like
cultures.
Canada.
Yeah, like Canada. People like the freedom or like the autonomy.
Yeah.
But resources like decision making, involvement, or like feedback doesn't necessarily work the same everywhere. It really depends
Sure.
on culture.
Sure.
In individualistic culture, not so much, but in collective culture, work really well,
Yeah.
and also work really well in like high uncertainty avoidance country, just not so much in a low uncertainty avoidance country.
Interesting. Interesting.
So that is one of the founding, which I found it very interesting.
That is interesting. That's a cool, I can't wait. I'd like to look at that research too.
Yeah, we will send a link there. So that we
Yes,
can all
it'll
look
be in
into
our
the
show notes, our
specifics.
website. Yeah, you can, all our links are there. We're not pulling stuff out of our nose, especially Hoshin.
No, we don't.
It's a lovely nose, but you don't want pulling stuff out of there.
Okay. And then the last point I kind of wanted to explore is about real world applications of the knowing these two specific dimensions, for example. Like it's important to know this because I think it affects how we operate in a really global team and
Yeah.
business. I think
sure.
especially in Canada, a lot of our colleagues are from everywhere. So like knowing how individualism, collectivism, uncertainty avoidance works, it can help us manage an international team, knowing whether a culture values structure versus flexibility,
Yeah.
whether people are, care more about individual inputs or group harmonies. It can help us to delegate, to communicate, and to motivate our employees, our colleagues, and our friends in some ways.
For sure.
And that also, same thing also applies to education and training, right? How we learn, whether some people likes a very rigid structure of curriculums, or they
Right.
like to study on their own. They just give them a
Right.
general guideline and they make their own day schedule.
Yeah.
Whether they like open task and exploratory learning curriculums, or they want word by word lectures, that also affects us. And I think another thing is conflict resolutions. In collective culture context, we do not like confrontations. We
Right.
don't talk about the conflict right in front with people. So you might need a third person. You might need a little coffee date to talk about conflicts and how to resolve it, rather than just like point it out right there between the two people. Rather individualistic culture, maybe it's okay to just have the two people who have conflicts to talk it out.
Yeah.
So so there's different ways of resolving that. And the last thing also I find a very interesting research what I want to share is about another real world application is about how online marketing works
Oh.
in different cultures. Specifically, again, the two dimensions that we mentioned. This research is by Cornell University. The research, the paper titled Individual Level Culture Effects on Multi-Perspective I Trust in B2C, means business to customer e-commerce. So the paper specifically measure how e-commerce,
Okay.
business to customer e-commerce,
Yeah.
how the trust, like in online trust, is built, or how and how individualist culture or collective culture affects the trust on e-commerce.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what did they find? Was individualistic more
So the finding is,
effective?
a person's culture traits, how much they dislike uncertainty, again, or we'll talk about uncertainty
Yeah.
avoidance, and whether they're individualistic or not, change how strongly stimuli like privacies, emotions, or social cues, the kind of thing that we use on like websites, will lead to trust. So whether a website mobilize emotion as a tool or mobilize social cues as a tool, or whether they have strong privacy settings, or whether all these different stimuli can affect trust on a website.
Wow.
In other words, the same website feature does not evoke the same level of trust. Depends whether people are from an individualist culture, collective culture, whether they're high certainty avoidance or low certainty avoidance. So that's the finding. And then here is the specific findings. For first, uncertainty avoidance. For people who live in a high uncertainty avoidance culture, things that reduce ambiguity, like for example, if they have very strong privacy setting, we have really specific explanation of how privacy protected in your website, usually you have a stronger position, a stronger positive effects on customers' trust. So
True.
if
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
if this
No,
is your
that makes
target, to make
sense.
sure your and then emotional factors like whether your website evoke the feeling of joy, evoke the feeling of love, family, or even fear. They're more influential when people are more sensitive to uncertainty. Means people are from like certain high certainty avoidance cultures.
Mm.
So emotions as a greater tool to use. So emotion reactions weigh more heavily on trust for high uncertainty avoidant individuals. For
Yeah.
example, in Japan, I assume that means for example, if you try to target Japanese customers, your website should have very specific explanation of privacy setting and make it very front and center, and make sure that your ad and your website evoke some sort of emotion to
Motion.
help them to purchase or trust your website.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that same rule will not apply, for example, to China because we're low certainty avoidance. So those two things will not work for us. But
Interesting.
yeah, and the other thing we measure is individualism and collectivism, how it shapes the social influence, how it guides social influence for websites, for example. Social cues, for example, whether your website has certain features that evokes a social engagement, whether, for example, maybe some website have social networking features.
Okay.
You can easily talk to someone, or you have a lot of feedbacks. You have like a comment section, people can talk to each other. These kind of
Interesting.
social cues features plays a stronger role in building trust for people who are more collective. Because
Interesting.
in collective cultures, people are more influenced by others.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah,
This is
so
just so fascinating. Yeah. Yeah.
it's fascinating. So if you want a business to more appealing to collective culture audience, make sure you have like comment section people can talk to you, so people can easily leave a comment, and then maybe even get people to talk to back end people or even talk to each other or different customers. Make sure there's some sort of thing that they can see collective opinions,
Yeah.
collective comments, some
Wow.
sort of networking, social networking features there. And of course, for those high on individualism, the social cues are less strong drivers of trust. So that
Yeah.
kind of feature doesn't really matters to
Yeah.
them. That's my finding. And that's
But
the
hey, that's
topic
good
today.
finding, which is another reason why, like, we are a great dynamic team. If you need to do business training, you can contact us. hello@canadiansalad.ca. We are definitely open and willing to be paid for that
Yeah.
knowledge transfer and information. But
Exactly. You know a lot.
yeah, but it does raise a lot of questions. And again, I feel like if tying it back to the beginning, I don't know that we understand how we communicate. And sometimes we just need a way to map out how we see the world and how we function in not only just how we were our countries of origin, but where we are now, because it definitely, you can see where there's miscommunication or people aren't purchasing as more, or the high turnover rate in the organization keeps happening because we're not in tune with the needs of the cultures that people embody, which is very much the core of how we function and how we operate unconsciously all the time. And so if
Yeah.
we're not aware of that, then we will come into these higher work stress, more conflict, less purchase on our website. It definitely makes a difference. And I don't think people really get how it impacts everything that you do. So
Oh, absolutely. And there's
Yeah.
another reason why these cultural dimensions are important, because without this framework, we also will
Yes.
not know how to categorize different culture, how they
No.
interact.
Yeah.
So yes, that's why I think we sometimes need this kind of framework. We really
We
do.
do.
We really
And this
do. Yeah.
podcast. So
And this podcast,
and
exactly.
you,
You're welcome,
Hoshin.
everyone.
Yes, you're welcome. Absolutely. A highly individualistic person with a highly collectivistic person. And we probably even have difference on uncertainty avoidance. Like you're much
We definitely do.
lower.
We
I'm much
definitely do.
higher. I'm just like, nope, I want to know. I want to
I'm
know.
definitely lower.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
which,
definitely low. Absolutely.
yeah. So that's the salad. That's the salad. And to end our salad episode, we are going to do a Canadian salad pop quiz on this very topic, which I'm very, very excited to ask you my question.
Okay, please ask
Can-
my question. Ask your
Can
question.
I go first?
Yes, you
Okay.
go first.
All right. So, in comparing the average credit card debt, okay, which credit card debt, if you think about it, in some ways, uncertainty avoidance, like we almost we're taking out credit because we just know that we'll be able to pay it back. So I'm just curious, who do you think has a higher credit card debt, Canada or China?
Definitely Canada. Absolutely Canada.
Okay, ding, 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 ding. Yes. It's true. It's true. So, which I think is very, very interesting. Canada has the highest household debt level among G7 countries with an average of $3,929 on their credit cards and an average of $72,950 in debt, which includes total debt like mortgage, credit card, lines of credit, car loans, personal loans. So that's the average in Canada. So if we look at China, we can see that in China, average credit card debt in China is only $1,728 US. So definitely lower. And anyway, the article goes into what contributes to the factors of credit. And typically it's middle class, people who don't have a lot of money, right? Which can be said of the same Canada, but you will see that there is more debt when you are richer, obviously. So anyway, so that was the quiz. So yeah, it really does paint a picture of even that, because you are borrowing money that you don't have. And you're also thinking, well, I can pay that back, which is interesting. It's a lot of faith. It's a lot of, for people who are from a more, I want to, they assume, but there's no guarantee. So it's uncertain too, but I think credit.
It's uncertain, but I think sometimes, some sense also kind of certain, because Canada is a more stable, more like a country with more welfare. People are well taken care of. They don't have to worry about
so maybe that's
like
that
medical
push.
bills, for example. And China, people are less stable country. You don't know where. Sometimes people don't even like maybe some sickness. So you have to pay a lot of money. Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's one of
See,
I think that's one.
This is why you're amazing, and just your perspective. Yeah. So, well, there you go, folks. Anyway, Thank you, Hostion.
Okay.
Oh, wait, you got a question. Sorry.
I have a question. Oh my God.
I was ready to end it without your question. I'm sorry. Okay, go.
My question is very interesting because I found it accidentally. Do you know which country is the least individualistic?
The least individualistic?
Yeah, because it has a 0 score in individualism. That's how
it's so collective. Oh my gosh.
I find it very fascinating. 0 is crazy.
0. Ooh, it's got to be a warm climate culture, I would imagine. Maybe. I'm going to say, I'm going to say, I don't know. I'm going to say Guatemala.
Guatemala?
I don't know.
The answer is not. It's Nigeria.
Do you have a hint for... Oh, it's Nigeria. I was going to ask for a hint for what continent. Nigeria has 0 individualism.
It's Nigeria. Yeah, they're a completely collective culture, which is crazy.
Wow. Yeah. I'm thinking about all our Nigerian friends. It's interesting.
I mean, they do like to travel in groups. I mean,
they do, and they always came together in the class as a group.
They would come together.
But then there were some personalities that were much more individualistic.
Individualism. I mean, maybe that's why they're here.
Maybe
in Canada.
True. Very cool. Oh, that's very cool. Well, we'll include that link. Follow us. We are on social media. We're on TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky. So if you want to just drop us a note, you know, how you resonated with this, or maybe things that you disagreed with, or even just share, just drop us a DM, or you can go to our website, canadiansalad.ca, and you can send us an email with the same information, hello@canadiansalad.ca. So thank you so much for joining and listening. Please do write a review. And leave us a comment.
Yes. I know. We would love to
just
hear
a little
from
5-star. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to have you join us next week. All new episode every Tuesday. Thank you so much, Hostion. Thank you so much, listeners, and we will see you soon.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Canadian Salad is written and produced in British Columbia, Canada by Hostion Ho and Andrea McCoy. Theme music is by Naver Avatyan from Pixabay.
This has been a good Dranklin production.